The desert stretched endlessly, golden dunes rolling like waves under a scorching sun. Every gust of wind carried sharp grains of sand that stung like needles, and the remains of the crashed settlement lay half-buried, jagged metal and broken panels jutting from the dunes. In the midst of it all, a small alien child crouched, knees pressed to her chest, skin shimmering pale blue under the harsh light. Her eyes were wide, fearful, and her breathing came in short, trembling gasps. She had been wandering since the crash, no food, no water, no guide, and every step had left her weaker. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the faint glow of the small metal band around her wrist pulsed, almost as if sensing her panic. She tried to move, but her legs gave out in the soft, shifting sand. Her tiny hands clawed at the ground, leaving shallow marks that the wind quickly erased. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound whispered danger, and her ears caught the distant screech of something large moving through the dunes. Her throat burned with thirst, her stomach ached, and her eyes darted desperately for any sign of shelter. And then she saw it. A shadow on the horizon, a figure striding across the dunes with purpose, tall, strong, human. The figure approached carefully, scanning the ruins before his eyes locked on her. She froze, unsure whether to run or hide, her heart hammering so loud she was sure he could hear it. The human stopped a few meters away, kneeling slowly, one hand raised in a gesture that said, "I mean no harm." His voice came, low and steady, though she couldn't understand the words. The tone mattered more than the meaning. It was calm, patient, kind. Her instincts screamed caution, but exhaustion and hope outweighed fear. Slowly she crawled toward him, each movement deliberate, fragile. He waited, giving her space, his other hand resting lightly on the hilt of a tool that could just as easily be a weapon. Finally she reached him. His arms, warm and solid, lifted her effortlessly. The metal band on her wrist blinked faintly, as if acknowledging him. She expected pain or cold, but found only safety. He carried her through the harsh dunes, moving with a rhythm that somehow defied the chaos around them. Every distant howl, every shift of sand, every glimmer of ruins told her the desert was alive with threats, but she felt a small spark of relief. Someone had come. Someone would protect her. For the first time since the crash, she dared to hope.
The wind rose suddenly, whipping sand into swirling sheets that stung every inch of exposed skin. The alien child clutched tightly to the human's broad shoulders as he adjusted the scarf around her face, shielding her from the desert's fury. The ruins behind them groaned under the storm, metal plates rattling and half-buried structures collapsing with each gust. Somewhere in the distance, a sand beast's low growl rolled across the dunes, drowned partially by the screaming wind, yet unmistakable. The human, tall and steady, moved with a soldier's precision, scanning every shadow, every dune crest, never letting the child slip from his sight. She had curled into him, trembling, yet her small hand rested against the glowing band on her wrist. The light pulsed faintly, as if sensing danger, and suddenly, shapes flickered along the edge of the storm. Mirages that weren't just illusions, but warnings. Her power, instinctive and wild, had begun to awaken. "You'll be safe," he said softly, words she didn't fully understand, yet the tone carried a promise stronger than any language. She looked up, eyes wide, and for the first time since the crash, saw warmth in his expression. He didn't just carry her, he bore the weight of responsibility, of understanding. In the heart of the storm, with every grain of sand slicing the air, a fragile trust formed. A shadow leapt across the dunes, sleek, fast, unnatural. The sand beast had found them. The human drew a weapon that hummed faintly, raised it with calm precision. "Stay close," he instructed. She nodded, clutching her wrist, feeling the pulse grow stronger. The air around her shimmered slightly as her mirage-like powers rippled outward, creating phantom shapes that darted across the dunes, confusing the predator. The beast hesitated, snarling in frustration, its glowing eyes searching for a real target. The human fired once, the sound cutting through the storm like thunder. Sparks of energy lit the beast's path, forcing it back. The child, emboldened by the first taste of control, focused again. Beams of shimmering light darted from her wrist, guiding the mirages and steering the predator away from them. Together, they moved, human strength and alien instinct, a partnership forged in desperation. As they reached a relatively sheltered ridge, the wind began to die down. The child clutched her band, exhausted but alert. The human crouched beside her, resting his hand lightly on hers. No words were needed. In the eye of the desert storm, they had survived together, and a silent bond had been sealed. A human and an alien, facing a hostile world and learning that trust could be stronger than fear. Sun dipped lower, casting long orange shadows across the jagged ruins. The wind had died to a whisper, but the desert still radiated heat, baking the cracked ground beneath their boots. The child's small feet stumbled over broken tiles and half-buried machinery, but the human kept a firm hand on her shoulder, guiding her carefully through the ruins. Ahead, a collapsed shelter trembled as if it could give way at any moment. From inside, faint mechanical noises suggested the old settlement's power systems were still flickering, unstable. "Stay back," he warned, his eyes scanning every dark corner, every shadow. She nodded, gripping the glowing band on her wrist. Its light pulsed faintly, a heartbeat synchronized to her own fear. Suddenly, a low, rumbling growl echoed from beneath the rubble. Sand shifted as something massive moved inside the wreckage, a sand beast trapped, but still alive. The child froze, staring at the creature's glowing eyes. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, yet something inside her flared, a spark of courage. "Look at me," the human said, kneeling so their eyes met. "You're not just a child, you're stronger than you know." She swallowed hard, then slowly lifted her hand. The glowing band flared bright, sending mirage-like shapes spinning across the ruins. The trapped sand beast snarled and lashed out at illusions, confused and disoriented. The human used the distraction to pry open a broken doorway, guiding her inside. Together they crept through narrow corridors, dust falling from the ceiling, shadows flickering with the fading light. She concentrated, her powers shaping shimmering duplicates of themselves, leading any predators away from the real path. Finally, they reached a small chamber, relatively intact. The air was cooler here, and faint electrical hums suggested some systems still worked. The child sank to the floor exhausted, but the human knelt beside her, brushing debris from her hair. No words were needed, they had survived another trial. In that quiet moment, she realized something. The desert was harsh, the monsters relentless, but with him she wasn't alone. She had a protector, and more importantly, a teacher for the strength that lived inside her. The desert sun vanished behind the horizon, painting the sky in fiery reds and purples. The ruins were silent, but the sense of survival and the bond between human and child shone brighter than any light in that wasteland. Night fell fast over the desert, swallowing the ruins in a blanket of shadows and wind-whipped sand. The child shivered, clutching her glowing wristband close, while the human checked the perimeter, scanning the dunes for movement. Somewhere in the distance, the desert beasts stirred, larger, faster, hungrier than before. Their eyes glinted like red embers in the darkness. A sudden roar split the night, echoing across the empty plains. Sand shifted violently as a massive silhouette charged toward them. The child's heart raced. She had never faced so many at once, yet instinct took over. She lifted her hand, and her glowing band pulsed like a drumbeat. Mirage-like illusions sprang to life, phantoms of herself and the human, darting in every direction, scattering the approaching predators. The human fired his weapon, a low hum of energy cutting through the storm. One beast lunged past the illusions and slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash, but more were coming. The child's palms glowed brighter, blue light spilling from her fingers, weaving walls and shifting fingers of shimmering sand and dust. Each blast of light knocked enemies off balance, slowing their advance. "This way," the human shouted, leading her toward a half-buried command tower. Its metal doors groaned as they pushed them open, the interior cooler, offering shelter from the storm outside. They ducked inside just as the largest sand beast leapt, clawing at the doorway. The child raised her hand instinctively, a bright beam hitting the beast squarely. It roared and stumbled back, confused by the mirage illusions that multiplied around it. Inside, they caught their breath. The child's chest heaved, sweat and sand mixing on her skin. The human knelt beside her, examining her glowing wrist. "You've done more than survive tonight. You protected us. You led them away." She nodded, realizing her power wasn't just survival, it was a gift, something rare and needed in this harsh world. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the tower, warmth and light offered a fragile safety. The child and the human exchanged a glance, understanding without words. The desert was merciless, but together they were unstoppable. And somewhere deep in her, she felt it, the courage, the strength, and the bond that would guide them through whatever the dunes threw next. The night was far from over, but for the first time, hope burned as bright as her glowing wrist. The first light of dawn barely cut through the sandstorm. Outside, the desert stretched like a burning ocean of gold and red, shifting with every gust. The ruins around the tower groaned under the weight of the wind. The child sat on the metal floor, knees tucked to her chest, wrists glowing faintly. The human stood at the doorway, scanning the horizon, weapon ready, muscles tense. Then came the rumble, closer this time. A massive sand beast, bigger than any they'd faced, tore through the dunes, its clawed legs sending waves of sand flying. Behind it, smaller packs emerged, moving with precision, herding them toward the open desert. The child's pulse quickened. "They know we're here," she whispered, but her voice carried a strength now, a calm that hadn't been there before. She lifted her hand, and this time the illusions weren't just copies of themselves, they stretched the desert itself. Sand spiraled into phantom towers, glowing silhouettes of creatures, blinding light and false movements. The largest beast hesitated, its glowing eyes scanning the chaos. One by one, the smaller predators collided with phantom walls and invisible barriers, slowed, misled, and confused. The human moved alongside her, firing with precision. Each shot was calculated, each step purposeful. Yet the child realized something. Her power was growing stronger, not just illusions, but light that could push, pull, even harm the beast if focused. She steadied her breathing, feeling the rhythm of the desert, the storm, the sand, the pulse of life around her. A roar tore through the sky. The massive beast surged forward, claws slamming into the tower. The metal shook, dust and sand filled the air. The child lifted both hands and a wave of blue light erupted from her, brighter than before, expanding like a rising sun. The beast staggered, howling in fury, forced back, unable to advance. The illusions danced around it, now synchronized with her will, forming a cage of light and sand. The human glanced at her, eyes wide. "You're amazing," he said, not as a compliment, but as awe for the bond they had formed. Side by side, they moved through the tower's ruins, her power clearing the path, his skill ensuring no threat could close in. Step by step, they carved a corridor through the desert, reaching the edge of the dunes. And then, in the distance, gleaming silver against the rising sun, rescue ships. Engines hummed, a promise of safety, of civilization, of hope. The child's heart leapt. Her illusions faded, the light dimmed, but the confidence remained. She had survived, she had protected, and she had discovered something within herself, strength, courage, and the power to change destiny. As the ships landed and the humans aboard began the descent, the desert beast retreated, sensing the new force among them. The child looked at her glowing wrist, now steady and calm. The storm had passed. The human smiled, offering his hand. "Let's go home." She took it, and together they walked toward the ships, leaving footprints in the sand. Proof that, in a world of monsters and storms, hope and courage always left a mark.
The child and the human climbed into the rescue ship, sand still clinging to their boots, dust coating their hair. The engines hummed, vibrating through the metal floor, shaking out every tension in their bodies. Outside, the desert sprawled endlessly, golden waves now calm after the storm. But inside, the air was thick with exhaustion, relief, and unspoken questions. The human knelt beside the child, checking her wrist. The glow was steady, faint but warm. "You've learned to control it," he said quietly. The child nodded, still catching her breath. "It feels different now, like it's listening to me." He smiled, a mixture of pride and awe. "It is. Your heart guides it." Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped urgently. On the horizon, another sandstorm brewed, faster and darker than before. The human frowned, adjusting the ship's trajectory. "Looks like the desert isn't done with us yet." The child's eyes narrowed. "Then we show it we're ready." Her confidence was no longer fragile. It was solid, shining through her every movement. They moved together through the cramped corridors of the ship, checking supplies, weapons, and the navigation system. The humans shared stories of previous desert missions, survival tips, and the strange creatures they had encountered. The child listened, absorbing every word, but her focus kept returning to her glowing wrist, the newfound power, and the understanding that she wasn't just being protected, she could protect others too. Outside, the storm clashed with the ship's shields, sending ripples across the metal hull. The child placed her hand on the window, feeling the energy in the storm. "I can help," she whispered. The human hesitated, then nodded. "I trust you." A wave of light burst from her hand, just enough to stabilize the shields, counter the turbulence, and guide the ship through safely. The storm passed like a wave retreating from a strong tide. In the quiet aftermath, the human looked at her and said, "You're not just a survivor. You're a force." The child smiled faintly, realizing for the first time that being small or young didn't mean being powerless. Together, they were more than just human and alien. They were partners, allies, and a symbol that compassion, courage, and empathy could face any storm. The desert stretched below, endless and golden, but now it seemed less threatening. They had survived, not just because of skill, but because they trusted each other. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew that the next challenge would come, but they would face it together, stronger than before.
The desert below roared as the next sandstorm approached, darker and faster than before. From the ship's viewport, twisted shadows moved across the dunes, sand beasts, larger and more cunning than any they had faced. The child's hands glowed faintly, pulsing with energy. "They're coming," she whispered. The human adjusted the ship's trajectory and gripped her shoulder. "We fight together. Remember, you're not alone." The child nodded, determination sharpening her features. She stepped forward, standing taller than her small frame suggested, letting the light from her wrist expand outward. The glow spread like liquid sapphire across the cockpit, illuminating every corner, stabilizing the ship against the incoming beasts. Below, the sand beasts struck, their massive limbs tearing at dunes, hurling clouds of dust and debris into the air. The child lifted her hand, projecting mirage-like illusions that confused the predators. Shadows twisted, sand seemed to move in impossible directions, and the beasts hesitated, uncertain where the real threat lay. The human fired the ship-mounted weapons, precise and steady, each shot buying them precious seconds. The child's light pulsed faster, synchronized with her heartbeat, guiding each blast with uncanny precision. One by one, the sand beasts fell or turned away, unable to reach the ship. The duo moved like a single organism. Human skill, alien power, and trust fused into an unstoppable force. Finally, the storm broke. Sand settled, golden dunes returned under the calm sun, and silence replaced the chaos. The human leaned back, exhausted but smiling. "You did it," he said, awe in his voice. The child blinked at her hands, the glow fading gently. "We did it," she corrected, a proud smile forming. Looking out over the desert, they saw the ruins of the settlement, silent witnesses to the storm and the beasts that had ruled it. But now, standing together, they felt unstoppable. Not just survivor and protector, not just child and human, but partners who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. The child placed her hand lightly on the console, feeling the residual energy in her wrist. "We'll be ready for the next one," she whispered. The human nodded. Together. And for the first time, the desert didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place where courage, empathy, and bond could create legends.
The sun dipped low over the desert horizon, painting the dunes in molten gold. The settlement ruins lay quiet, scarred by storms and time, but a faint hum of hope vibrated through the air. The child's wrist glowed softly, a calm blue now, resonating with the strength she had discovered within herself. The human stood beside her, scanning the ruins. "Rescue ships are coming," he said, voice steady. "We've bought enough time for them to arrive." The child nodded, but her eyes weren't on the ships. They were on the desert, on the shadows that had chased her, and on the bond she had formed with her protector. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed across the dunes. A new threat? The child instinctively raised her hand. Light spilled from her wrist, shaping into illusions of colossal figures that towered over the sand. The approaching threat faltered, confused, unsure of what was real. Behind her, the human armed the ship-mounted weapons, ready for anything. The beasts charged, but the child and human moved as one. Every pulse of light, every precise shot, every illusion synchronized like a dance of survival. Sand erupted, claws struck, but nothing could break their unity. One final massive sand beast surged forward, its teeth gnashing and eyes glowing. The child's hands flared with energy, and with a surge of willpower, she projected a blinding beam. The beast screamed, recoiled, and collapsed into the dunes. Silence fell. The wind stilled. The golden sun reflected off the dunes, bathing the child and human in warmth. The rescue ships appeared above, descending slowly, shining lights across the desert. Soldiers poured out, scanning, checking, helping, but the child and her protector didn't need help anymore. They had survived together. The human knelt beside her, wiping sweat and sand from his face. "You were incredible," he said softly.
The child smiled, small but proud. "We were incredible," she echoed, the bond they had forged through fear, hope, and courage. As the ships lifted them away from the desert, she looked back one last time at the dunes, the ruins, and the place that had tested her. She had started as a frightened, starving child, but now she was a beacon of hope, a symbol that even in the harshest, most merciless worlds, humanity, courage, and empathy could prevail. Together, human and alien child flew into the sky, ready for the next challenge, ready to rewrite what it meant to survive and to trust that the universe could still be kind.